All right. Ladies and gentlemen, how are you? Good to see you. Just want to make sure everybody can hear me. And if you're on, if it's possible, and I know that some of you might be making your way into the live and possibly also have uh, like a commercial that sometimes, let's take a look here, that a commercial that plays. But so how we doing, everybody out there? Thank you for being here. If you can't hear me, be sure you let me know. Let me do a test over here just to make sure. Hello, hello. I think we're good to go. All right. So it's been a great week. I'm going to just turn this down a little. We're a little hot. It's going to be a good day when your best friend in the whole wide world has made an appearance. Simba, good. That's good. Thank you, Michelle. When Simba, oh, good. All right, Janet, glad you could catch a live finally. I'm just going to kind of mess around with this light a little bit. No, maybe that's a little much. Kind of a junk show this morning. It was so cold outside. The turkeys came, a big group of turkeys came and ate probably every bird seed that I had put out for the cardinals, the titmice, the chickadees, the mourning doves. And I had to go refeed the birds because the turkeys eat it all, which is totally good. I love the turkeys. And then the turkeys come back and it's this cycle. And I'm really codependent when it comes to birds in the winter time, in the summer too. But in the winter, they're waiting for me in the dark when I'm putting the first seeds. I can hear the mourning doves in the trees. So that's what I've been up to. Simba went outside. We keep him on a little leash, which sounds kind of weird and stuff, but he can only go so far. But he still managed to catch a vole, like a little vole that comes out and tries to grab something and like some of the food. But I caught him just in time. The vole is free, which is not really that good because it buries itself under my house. But there he goes. He's had it. He's going to go vole hunting. So he made his cameo appearance. What else? Thank you, everybody. The members that are here, Kelly, it's great to see you. Ursula, Karen, and all the people that are here. I'm guessing, but not 100% positive, that you saw the video on the first no bottled oxygen ascent of Everest with Reinhold, Messner, and Peter Habeler in 1978. And my dream was to do the big expanded version of it, but it would have been 45 minutes long, easily. Not 45, because you could probably do a documentary on it in that amount of time. But there were a lot of little tidbits that I left out. And one of them was this. I've been having a conversation with Alan Arnett, who is the great Everest historian who reports on Outside Online every year and reports on all the expeditions that are on the mountain, north and south. And he has a statistics page, and his statistics are shocking. That among other things, an article, I believe it was in National Geographic, said something to the nature of, it's still a big deal to climb Everest without oxygen and without the use of bottled oxygen. And Alan showed me some statistics. And at the top, before he put them down, he said, oxygen is good. And there are apparently the death rate, if you attempt Everest without oxygen and get up into the death zone, 40% of the people die. That's a coin toss. And I think the problem that with it is that a lot of those people have no idea what they're getting into. They haven't done their due diligence. And the reason I know that inherently is because, not that I've tried Everest without oxygen, it was my dream at one time, and then I had 2 kids, and I decided, like Peter Habeler, I didn't want to go home brain dead and not even recognize my kids. And it was just, that was where I drew the line. I was still taking risks and things like that, but I wasn't going to do Everest without bottled dose. But the reason I know that if you do your due diligence, your chances of dying are greatly diminished, because I know personally, I think at least 5 people, more people who have climbed Everest without oxygen and lived. Melissa Arno Reed, one of the great women climbers of our time. James Bruman, a good friend of mine, did it in 2018, I believe. Adrian Ballinger, Conrad Anker, friend of mine, Ed Viesters, who I've filmed with, or not. I know him, and there's the list goes on with these people who understand that you're so far out on a ledge that you don't just do it because down here at sea level it seems like a cool thing to do. So we have people like the gentleman from Kenya last year who endeavored to climb the mountain without bottled O's. Wonderful man, seemed like a beautiful human being, who I think didn't realize what he was up against. And the most unfortunate aspect of his passing and losing his life was that he was with a Sherpa of very little experience who refused to leave his side. And that Sherpa disappeared. Let me know, by the way, if commercials jump in. I've got to go into the settings, and because I've got mine playing on a different. Okay, you can just skip that. I'm curious if people get commercials. Karen, your dream is base camp. Well, dream, do it. Make it happen. It's totally doable. I might be going to Everest Base Camp before the season this coming spring on a project that is completely unrelated to anything of what I've been covering on this channel, but it's an opportunity for me to go do some filming. And if I can get to Everest Base Camp and say hello to some of the teams that are setting up early, how cool. Karen, you can do it. Yeah. Okay. You want, sure. Anything is possible. One of these days, I'm going to lead a trek to base camp. I just don't know how to pull it off, and if you will, sell it and organize the costs and the permits. It's not my forte, but that would be fun. Maybe 8 people with a nice supported trek. If you're interested in that, we can do it. That's not an impossible thing. So, Reno, Nevada is here. Good to see you, Ali. But I still put that ascent with Messner and Habeler as one of the greatest, essentially in Everest history, at least. And when they roped up at the bottom of the Hillary step, they basically just coiled the rope loosely around their waists. Messner climbed the Hillary step first, and then when he got to the top, he didn't even belay Habeler. You can see the footage of Peter actually trying to get the rope out of his way. It should have just unclipped or untied. And that was so Reinhold could film down. And I think that's pretty cool. So essentially, you have more or less 2 oxygenless ascents, solo ascents side by side. So I was having a conversation with my friend Jochen Hemleb, truly one of the most important Everest historians of our time, without whom we very well may never have found the remains of George Mallory in 1999. And I believe that beyond truth. It is, without Jochen, it might never have happened. So here we are. Thank you, Jochen. But we were talking about the 78 ascent with Messner and Habeler, and he started going off on, he's like a dictionary. You just get him started and it's pretty cool. But he said in 1975, now we're talking about the greatest mountaineering climbs of all time, not just without bottled oxygen. The Chinese, their summit in 1975 on the north side, there were 9 people, 8 men and a woman, and they had 2 oxygen bottles between them for the entire summit ascent. And before that, there were 2 climbers who bivouacked right at the second step without any oxygen. That's ridiculous. That's just insane. And so on their ascent, on their summit day, I believe it was May 27th of 1975, those 2 bottles of oxygen were just for the occasional, just to grab a little, hit from, if you will. And any pictures you could see, actually, any pictures of the 78 summit day, you can see, they're not using oxygen. There's Fantong or Panduo, the woman, near the summit. So yeah, they are like on the like right before the summit. Do you see any oxygen there? 1975, and nobody ever talks about that. That's, to me, that's one of the greatest ascents of all time. And here they are on the summit calling down to base camp, right? The guy there has the radio and he's like, we made it. And then a lot of people want to discount the 1960 Chinese, which would be the first ascent on the north side, and they ran out of oxygen and bivvied above the second step. And everybody goes, they could never have done that without oxygen. Yes, they could have. It's very conceivable that they did. So those 2 ascents, 1960 and 1975, to me, at least in terms of Everest lore, signify some of the 2 of the greatest climbs ever in the mountain. Now, we can talk about Mallory and Irvine. I'm happy to do that because I think on that expedition in 1924, Teddy Norton and Howard Somerville made it to 28,000+ feet before turning around in deplorable conditions in the couloir, the deep snow, the horrible footing. That's incredible. And they lived, given their equipment, given their knowledge of altitude. Even not making it to the summit makes that possibly one of the greatest climbs of all time, at least to that point, as was the Mallory and Irvine. They were seen on the ridge. I'm not trying to create a debate here, but I always believe that they were seen at the first step below the second step. I'm not trying to poke a sleeping tiger or anything like that, but so that could have been considered one. I just saw, yes, Kestrel, Herman Buell, Nanga Parbat, 1953, no oxygen. And I believe that was solo, right? Didn't Herman Buell do that? Then you've also got Kurt Dienberger, who did the first ascent of Dhaulagiri, I believe it was in 1957, and then he did the first ascent of Broad Peak. The only guy, well, he's still living, he's 92, who's ever done 2 first ascents. I believe there was one of his partners. Oh my gosh, I'm like kind of losing it. A lot of stuff going. Oh, fine, rub it in, Chef Chris, being from St. Martin. It was 10 degrees this morning at the house, and I love it. So beautiful. I'm glad you have the day off. Beautiful, beautiful. Maybe Chef Chris, you get me down there and I'll do a Everest presentation for people who are on vacation down there. That's an idea. And just trying to plant a seed. And so I think that's something to say. Yes, Ursula. Yeah, Herman Buell. There's also Jerzy Kukuczka, the Polish climber, who was the second person ever to do, in terms of a body of work, the second person to climb all 14 8,000 meter peaks. And he did all of them except for one via a new route or in winter. And then I believe he's the only person to date who ever climbed two 8,000 meter peaks in one fell swoop in winter time. So there's a human amongst humans. I was going to say a man amongst men, but a human amongst humans, because you can't discount some of the incredible ascents by women. So you've got Wanda Rutkowitz, the first women's ascent of K2 back at a time where climbing K2 was a big deal. It still is, but it's dialed in now. You don't need, it almost makes me sick, but it's just kind of part of the way that the mountaineering realm is going. You don't need a lot of experience to go climb an 8,000 meter peak anymore. You need to have a lot of wherewithal and bravery. Welcome. Thank you so much, Pyro Tublo. Welcome to Silver. I appreciate you very, very much. That means so much to me. It's how I am doing this. It really is. And I feel so blessed and honored that people would take time out of their day and their lives to say, I support you, because somebody was giving me a whole rash of crap in the comment. Simba's back. A whole rash of crap in the comments of my recent video. Here you go. And saying how he thought it was so lame that I would do a brand insert, like, and I did the earbuds, and I was like, dude, like, you know, if I just had nothing but time on my hands, I would probably produce films, and money was no object. I'd probably produce, I've got about 5 documentary ideas, but this is how I do it. This is how I'm making a living, literally. And just ask my wife. The most supportive human being on the planet Earth. She's like, go for it. Yes, I agree. Jerzy Kukuska is a hero. Died way too young on Lhotse, trying a new route on Lhotse. I believe disappeared. I don't think they ever found his remains. Yeah, I digress. So when you become a silver member, or a patron over on Patreon, you're making a difference in my life. I'm not getting loaded like this guy said. He thought because he saw my wood stove in the background and my pine logs on the walls, it's like my house is pretty small. But on that topic, next week, this coming week, I'm going to do a live Zoom call. So it'd be interactive with members and Patreon base camp level members. And that's going to be next week. I'll put the times out. I'll do one for people who are kind of east in Europe and Eastern, and then maybe all the way down to Australia, and ones from here, East Coast, West, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to schedule 2. So if you're interested in that, you could become a member for a day and do it. And you could be part of that, which would be cool. So I'll send out the link to the Zoom meeting, and then that way I can make your face full and you can talk, which is nice. It's nice for me to not always have to do the talking. So the one thing that I just saw somebody cheering Wanda Rutkowitz, who was just one of the most incredible climbers in the world, let alone women who have climbed that expedition that she became the first woman to summit K2, 1986, devastating year. Kurt Diemberger was there with his partner, Julie Tullis. She died. Alan Roos died. Alan Pennington died. There were, I think 8 people died on the mountain that year, and they got trapped up high in a storm. Kurt Diemberger's book, I believe it's Summits and Secrets, is gripping. One of the most gripping tales I've ever heard. And they were so far out there. And 2 of the people who lost their lives, who disappeared on that expedition, were the Berards, Lillian Berard, who a half an hour after Wanda Rutkowitz became the first woman to climb K2, became the second woman to climb K2. She and her husband disappeared on the descent. I honestly don't know if they found their bodies on the way ever, unfortunately, but that is something that would be a worth doing a story about. And I fortunately got to meet and spend some time with Kurt Diemberger. It's probably been 20 plus years now. He used to live in Massachusetts, and he did a talk on his first ascents of Dhaulagiri and Broad Peak. And he was fascinated. He asked me a gazillion questions about filming George Mallory, and so we struck up this friendship. And at the time, I had two little kids. It's an excuse. It's not a good reason. I just got so busy. He said, "Come and look me up in, sometime, and come spend an afternoon, and we'll shoot the shit and talk about mountain climbing." I never did it. Never did it. He's 92 years old now. I've reached out to him. I pray that I can somehow, some way, get Kurt Diemberger on this, because I consider him to be certainly not only one of the great mountain climbers of the last couple of eras, but the last of a breed. There's no more first ascents to be done on 8,000 meter peaks, maybe a new route, the Fantasy Ridge on Everest or something like that. But and in that, talking about the Fantasy Ridge of Everest, we've got Tom Hornbein and Willie Unsolved, who did the Hornbein Couloir in 1963, an absolute courageous ascent. And on the way, when they got to the summit, it was so late in the day, they questioned how dangerous it would be to descend back down that same route. So they traversed over down through, if you will, the South Col route, the Hillary Norgay route, where Barry Bishop and the other, who did Barry Bishop climb? So there were four guys up above in the death zone, and they bivvied without oxygen. So I'm trying to kind of put a little poke in there for the Chinese in 1960 to have been able to succeed. They bivvied, and so that was the first traverse. And then you've got and by the way, about 6 months before Tom Hornbein passed away, I reached out to him. We talked. I know Tom, and he politely declined. He goes, "I'm not doing any more interviews." I was like, "Oh man." So I met him some years ago in Golden, Colorado. But great man, great climber. But on this channel, there's Stephen Venables, who, with Ed Webster, among others, and two others, did an oxygenless first ascent on the Kangshung Face, a new route, got to the South Col. Venables went to the summit without oxygen, bivvied way up and close to the summit, came back down, survived. He's on this channel. And so to me, he became the first Brit to summit Everest without bottled nose. That's an amazing climb. So I'm just going on kind of a rant and a tear. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'll kind of check in here. So I don't want to miss anybody. Hey, thank you, Mark, for the helping. Let's see. So, what do you think? Sergey, you were just saying about they found Irvine. I don't know if that was your question. Sandy Irvine, partial remains of Sandy Irvine were found in October on Mount Everest by a team with Jimmy Chin, a National Geographic team. Apparently the remains were found by Eric Repke, who is a climber, filmmaker, super talented guy. But the team it was just a boot with a foot inside and a sock. And I believe because they probably weren't supposed to be poking around on the glacier, they presented it to the Chinese Tibetan authorities, who have the boot, and they're doing DNA testing on it right now. So pretty big time. And that's what I'm doing. My next video about. That should be out sometime in the middle of the week. I asked Tom Holzell, good friend of mine, great historian who coined the term The Mystery of Mallory and Irvine, with Audrey Salkeld. And I'm going to ask him what his thoughts are on that. And so be looking for that. And it will talk about what Mark Sinnott and Jamie McGinnis said about the Chinese in 75 finding Sandy's remains, possibly taking the camera away from the mountain and either taking the body or pushing the body down. And so I'm going to talk about that. It's going to be a really, really cool video. Sophia, Patreon. I'm not sure if you're still with us. Patreon.com/Everest Mystery. You go there. I have a page. It's just another place where you could support the channel. But I also have free memberships there. And the reason I do that is because if you sign up for the free membership and I promote something or do a post, I post it there to everybody and you'll get an email, as opposed to you have to go to YouTube and see, oh, what's going on in Everest Mystery. There's also a base camp level membership. You can, I think just to get in the door, it's $3, but you can make that whatever you want. There's some very, very kind gentleman who's multiplied that, I believe, tenfold every month. And believe me, that means more than you can imagine. It means a lot to me. So, patreon.com/Everest Mystery. And then also underneath this, there's the button that says join. And it's right next to where it says Everest Mystery underneath. I'm going to try to find it. Oh, hold on. This one. No, right there. I'm pointing down right there. I'm looking at a screen over there. Anyway, so yeah, I'm kind of, pretty stoked that you guys are here. I love so much doing these live videos. One, because it's an opportunity for me to see real time what you're thinking and what things interest you. So I'm going to tell you, big secret. I am working on another video about Jersey Kukuska, Kurt Diemberger, maybe Lillian Berard, or the women of K2 1986. I'm not trying to say, oh, do it easy and put them all into one lump sum of one video. It's just because they were so powerful then. And Julie Tullis, amazing climber who died up there. Basically, they were stuck up on the mountain and died. They're just devastating stories. That's one. Chinese 75. There's so many amazing stories. So when you write me, somebody wrote me a message. Kelly, somebody wrote me a message about Edward Whymper, the first ascent of the Matterhorn in 1865. That is an amazing story. Scrambles Amongst the Alps is a book, a must read, a gripping book, even going back to when was it, 1770 something, when de Saussure and Picard climbed Mont Blanc for the first time. There were people back then who thought Mont Blanc was the biggest mountain in the world. Amazing. These are kind of cool. Maybe do a conglomeration of these and put them together, because there's really nothing to, no footage or no photographs. There is a woman that somebody called to my attention, Lute Jerstad. Thank you. I appreciate it, Chris. Yep. Everest 1963 with Barry Bishop. But the idea of pursuing these stories is so important. Now I'm kind of lost my way, but I also saw somebody commented, you'd love to see Conrad on this channel. I talked to him and we chatted not too long ago. And he's like a kind of another level, right? He's big time and has a lot of contractual obligations and everything. And he said that he might not be allowed to without like some different kind of permissions. I don't want to complicate it more than it is, but he said, just reach out to me after Christmas and we'll see. If I'm in Nepal in March and April, I'll see him. And I think it would be cool to do an interview with him in person anyway. One of the reasons I'd like to talk to him is, one, just to talk to me about climbing Everest without oxygen. I know a couple people, when Conrad came down from his summit without O's, he stopped ever so briefly in the South Col, and I know he went into a tent and sat down for a few minutes, and the people who saw him, which is what happened to Adrian Ballinger, everybody, like, he's right on the edge. Adrian Ballinger would be a good guy to talk to more about climbing without oxygen, because there's that photograph of his, which I wish I could cut away to photographs of him on the ladder of the second step, and it's looking down, and he's just clinging, frozen, clinging there, just absolutely on the edge. And so I love the oxygenless stuff. Somebody asked me, Allison Hargraves. Oh yeah, Billy, right on. But somebody asked me, does more exposure at altitude do damage to your brain? And it does. It certainly does. I also believe that the brain is a it doesn't start 100% and then slowly go down over your lifetime. I believe that it's more elastic, that you can rebuild. So in 2019, when I had what is surmised to have been a TIA, a trans ischemic attack, which is a tiny little stroke that just goes away. I came home from that expedition. I've talked about this in lives before. I came home from that expedition slower, just less emotional, flat. And what I did was, you can see behind me, there's two guitars. I started practicing 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, then getting up to 4 or 5 hours a day. I was just doing really boring practices, like scales and things like that, exercises, and it worked. And so 2 years, 2 years or so after I got back home, I was running around being a goofball and joking and doing typical Tom Pollard stuff that I used to do in school and make the teachers all angry at me and shit like that. But I was running around like a madman at the house, and my wife looked at me and she goes, "You're back." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "You're home." What? The guy that left for Everest in 2019 just got home. And I literally, like tears came to my eyes. I didn't know. She knew. She had to deal with me. Do you want to go for a hike? No. You want to go for a walk? No. I didn't work out. I didn't go for a hike. I didn't get off the couch technically for 2 years. And crazy. So I just saw somebody suggested, how about Anatoli Boukreev as a feature, as a body of work, as one of the great climbers. 100%, one complete freak of nature, absolute monster among humans. And had he not lost his life on Annapurna in December of 1997, on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, I believe it was, I think his career would have gone down as one of the greats of all time. So Anatoli is amazing. I feel that I've done a few videos that focused on Anatoli, and a lot of people, unless they go like peel away the layers and see what it is that I'm talking about, they think that I'm being critical of Anatoli, and I'm really not. And now I don't completely know the story, but I just think that if you're a guide, you should be using O's. And I get the philosophy that if you have O's and they run out, you're screwed. Totally get that. But you're better with O's than without O's, 100%. Is it cumbersome? Yes, but I just think that would have made a difference. That's a whole other story. You can see my playlist on the 1996 disaster, a few videos that are pure Anatoli. Love him. I think he's a good man. I wish so much that I could have had the opportunity to climb with him or be in the presence of him to see. I love that. I love that guy. And I think those Eastern Europeans, the Poles, there's some amazing German climbers. They're just, guys are just completely out in another world. And I have a lot of admiration for him. So, Alan, aviation, when you climb without oxygen, you see a Yeti like Messner did. Well, the cool thing about Messner is he did at one time believe that there was truth to the Yeti. And there are also bears that stand up on their hind feet and walk. I don't know if you've ever seen in videos on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or wherever of bears that literally walk like a human being. So Messner went on an expedition to see if he could prove or disprove the Yeti. And in his mind, he disproved it. So when people say that Messner believes in Yetis, that's not true. He went and researched it and looked up every potential avenue to find out if it was real or fake or legend. And he made the conclusion that it was legend. So you can't really, pile on him. He did the work. How is it going getting Neil Beetleman or Beidleman on the show? Mixed. I'll stay tuned on that one. Sometimes it's not as easy as I'd like to think, and but I'm on it. And I think he represents one of the great personalities and figures in all of kind of modern history in mountaineering because of his place in that 96 expedition. So let me just kind of look through. If you're interested in the 96 disaster, suggest the book by Lou Kashishka, After the Wind. Ursula, absolutely. You're the one who first called my attention to that book. That is an account that should be read. And the cool thing, I'm almost on you, Karen. Hold on a second. The cool thing about Lou's book is he's not that well known. He was one of the guys who turned around when you were supposed to have turned around on the mountain. When Rob Hall said, this is when you do it. And I think they were just below the South Summit, and he and two others did. I'm not going to try to recall their names, but Lou is one of the guys who turned around, and they lived. And then they got back down to camp and were pretty spent, just like, John Krakauer and everybody else. They were completely fried down there. Wyoming Adventures, good to see you. Always good to see you. Cape Cod Steve, love seeing you here. Thank you. Karen, hey, Coach Tim, sorry, I was thinking of Andy Politz. Andy Politz has been on this channel many times, and I could probably call him up right now and he'd answer the phone and go live on my telephone, Andy, let's go. He's always game for a chit chat. Great man, strong climber, and some of the most incredible experiences in the mountains have taken place with Andy. Here's kind of a cool story, going off on a tangent before I get to Karen's question about George Mallory. I think I saw that in there somewhere. When I met Andy Politz in 1999 on Everest on the Mallory and Irvine research expedition, on rest days, we'd get up early. Andy would be the first guy to make the coffee, right? So you'd go in and he'd pour you coffee, and then Andy would start talking. and tell these incredible stories. He was on K2 in 1986 on an American team. And I'm going to look up, I want to make sure I get both the names, but he was watching two of his teammates coming down. Andy was in base camp, and he looked a couple of miles up and he saw his two friends coming down, and an avalanche tripped. One of them was Alan Pennington, and was the other guy. I hate to keep you waiting here, but it's worth it because John Smolich. Okay. And Andy watched from afar as the avalanche slowly picked up momentum and engulfed these two guys. And then Alan, I think Smolich went under the snow, but Pennington fell and like turned kind of head downhill, and only his backpack still on his body was sticking up above the snow. And when they were watching, completely helpless, they, from a distance, they're just like, just do a push-up, like, right, you're falling down, just go like that, and your head will pop out of the snow if your backpack is out of the snow. So they're like yelling, do a push-up, do a push-up. So I thought that story haunted me for years. Fast forward 2002, I'm on the Moose's Tooth in Alaska with a great climber, a heli ski guide, and a guy named Jed Workman. And we were going to do just the normal route called ham and eggs on the Moose's Tooth. And we started out at 5 a.m. We went up. He was putting a pin just in the first rock section of the climb because it's mixed mist. So you keep your crampons on, you dry tool, stem out, ice, just this really, really cool climb. And I couldn't see him. The rope was up and over a bump. And I'm just like looking up. Like, and I hear, woof, and I knew it was an avalanche. And I looked up, and this wall of snow just went whoosh, and threw me backwards, upside down on my back, and racing. It was probably that steep, racing downhill. And I was going like that. And I thought, wow, if there's a rock, I'm dead if I hit my head into a rock, even though I did have a helmet on. So I somehow managed to turn around. And when I did, I became buried in the avalanche, and it's still flying down. And the snow plug jams, like the snow, it was like somebody was taking a battering ram and jamming snow down my throat. I'm choking almost just thinking of it. And I thought, holy shit, I'm definitely dead. Like there's 100%, it's over. And I thought about my two children, and I thought, what a freaking waste this is. I can't believe it. Climbing a route called ham and eggs, and Tom's gonna die. And in the next instant, I remembered the story of Andy. We're talking 8 seconds, right? In the next instant, as I'm preparing to die, it felt like 100 people were standing on my back. I'm buried, trying to create a pocket of snow. I remember the story Andy told me about seeing Alan Pennington going downhill and do a push-up. And I thought, wow, that's kind of a disparate thought, wouldn't you think? And as the avalanche slowed down, I pushed up and popped out. And I thought, oh my God, Alan Pennington just saved my life. And I didn't tell Andy that story for, probably 10 years. I didn't tell him the story. And when I told him, he cried. Of course, Andy's just as much of a softie as I am. And Andy, he said, if that story of my friends, John and Alan, helped save your life, then at least something good came out of that. So I digress. In my life, that was one of the greatest climbs of my life because I lived through an avalanche. I was in an avalanche with Andy in 2013 on Mount Washington. I was 100% convinced he was dead. And 6 hours later, I found out that he had survived, and he broke his right leg underneath the knee. Identical injury, identical as George Mallory. Literally the exact same break in an avalanche. That's a whole other story. That was scary shit. I digress. Karen, you were asking. Hi, Kate. You love our live and the videos. Thank you so much. And thanks for being a member. I appreciate it. I'm not trying to hawk being a member, but if you become a member or go to Patreon and become a patron on the base camp level, you can jump onto I'm going to do the Zoom telephone call probably this coming week in 2 different chunks, so everybody in all the time zones can do it. And then I'll do another one next month. So you'd have to be a member to do it. I'm not trying to exclude anybody. I promise you. I'm just trying to say thank you to the people who are the members. It's just a way to say thanks, because it does mean a lot to me. Karen, Tim, Karen, Boukreev, you love Boukreev. Who doesn't love Anatoli Boukreev? That guy, it's just it's a tough one, you know? By the way, talking about that, so I believe that I want to make sure that I don't say something wrong. I have to, Annapurna. So I believe he was with, he was with Simone. I believe that Simone Moro, is going back to Annapurna this winter. Don't mark my word. I've heard that they're going back. Personally, I think the winter ascents of 8,000 meter peaks are kind of one of those great unknowns where if you're looking for the real challenge, less people, you're still doing cool stuff on 8,000 meter peaks or trying to do a new route. Hey, where is George's camera, Steve? Great question. It's been surmised that the Chinese found it in 1960 or 75 and removed the camera, 1975, wink, wink, and that they botched the development of the film. It's secondhand story that Mark Sinnott heard from potentially 5 or 6 different sources, people who didn't even know each other, and reported the same thing, that the camera was removed from the mountain. So where it is, it's certainly not on the mountain. I've said this even before Sandy Irvine's remains were found, partial remains were found in October. I have said that if you are ever going to spend any money trying to search for Sandy Irvine, you're wasting it if you go up the mountain to look for him, including the camera. It was a bold statement, going out on a limb. I felt like it wasn't, I knew, at least in my heart, that he's gone. And especially after Mark Sinnott went into Tom Holzell's slot, found him not there, given all the searching that the Discovery Channel did with Adrian Ballinger, Jake Norton, David Morton, John Greiber. That Discovery Channel team was a bunch of amazing human beings, good friends of mine. I just know that wasn't the place. If there's anything to be done on the mountain that I think a future expedition should try to do to try to get more information about the mystery of Mallory and Irvine, they would need a permit to do it or be extremely ready to be arrested or lose permission to ever enter China again, would be to go and climb under the second step, go to the couloir named after Norton and look in that area and see the viability of an ascent up the Norton couloir. Because other than Reinhold Messner in 1980, solo ascent who traversed much lower down the mountain. It's really not been done. And now there's an idea for one of the greatest climbs of all time. The 1980 solo oxygenless ascent by Messner. That's a beauty. The Crystal Horizon, his book on that. Whoa, really, really good. I love Messner because he's uncompromising in who he is. And he doesn't mind if he's hated for his ferocity. And I love that. My favorite boss, my favorite person that I ever worked with was a guy who wasn't afraid to tell you that what you were doing sucked. This sucks. And I'll be like, oh, that really hurts my feelings. No, you're better than this. Like, I love that. So that's who Messner is in the mountaineering realm. He doesn't mind. Go ahead, hate me. Look what I did. Anyway, so I digress. So that's where's George's cameras. Who fell first, Mallory or Irvine? I think George Mallory fell first. That's just my gut. George Mallory fell first. Sandy stopped him, but he fell more than once. Sandy stopped him, held him, or they were around a rope pulled off, and they were dangling on either side of a rock, their rope. The pull marks on Mallory's body, where the rope was tight around him, it's an upward tug, if you will. And so he was certainly weighted on the rope, fixed to something above him. And so that's what I believe. A lot of people say, why won't you publish the pictures, or why won't you put more pictures out there? One, because it's out there. If you do a good search of the discovery of George Mallory, somewhere out there you'll find it. The entire video footage of the body, it's all there. I don't need to be that guy. Neither does Jake Norton, any of that. You know what I think is really cool? On the day that we went up, on May 1st, the day that Conrad found George Mallory, Conrad forgot his camera. And so I love that. This is like something kind of cool irony of that. It's like, well, imagine if he was alone. People like, I swear to God, I found a body. What the hell would he have done, And so I think that I love that. Marion, if that's what happened, we should never know if they summited. Correct. We probably will never know if they made it or not, unless that camera is found and it shows a photograph on the top. Or as Julie Summers, my esteemed guest, who wrote Fearless on Everest, Sandy was her great uncle. She said, or if they find Sandy's remains and there's a note scribbled that says, we made it on, such and such a time, and here were the conditions. That's it. That's the only way. So it's one of those mysteries that will probably never get solved, probably. Enrico Fermi. There is a video on YouTube about the first attempt Kobush made in 2019. Oh, cool. Yeah. So about Josh Kobush trying Everest solo in the winter. Yeah, man. He went through some cold, my God, winter solo Everest. Whew, amazing. I love it. You guys are having a side conversation about skiing. Awesome. Yeah. So, Billy, you asked if Mallory had rope burns here, had he already broken his leg? Really good question. And there's so many questions that there's so many things that we know that happened. To put them in order is almost impossible. We know he had a hole over his head, right? That went through his skull. We know he broke his leg. We know he had a gash on his hand. We know that he had rope burns and bruising on his ribs, meaning he was alive long enough to bruise. Frostbitten hands. Which order did that go in? Really hard to say. And one of his feet didn't have a boot. That's interesting. Did it fall off? You know, like you ever hear of people in car accidents, or they fall a long way and their shoes are off, right? Because they just like are pulled out of their shoes. So I don't know. I'm not really sure. So uh, up in the air, very cool. Any thoughts on the disappearance of Wanda Ruckwitz on Kanchenjunga? Horrible, you know. I mean, just for her to go up there and try that. I believe so. I actually am not hugely familiar with that climb, but I believe she summited and was coming down from the mountain, and then was supposed to be down at a camp, and there were others waiting for her, and she never showed up. She disappeared, and I don't believe they ever found her body. So Tony, good to see you. What do you mean we'll never know? Certain do oh yeah, sure, right. He knows it all. I yeah, I strongly believe that the gentleman you're talking to does a great disservice to the truth, having put out so many lies and fabrications about what he thinks he knows about what happened in 1999, that you can't believe anything. So it's not like saying, "Oh, I'll take the good stuff with the bad." There's so much bullshit that comes out of there that I'm sorry, dude. You gotta change your tact on that. Nobody knows. Nobody knows, especially that guy. And that guy littered the mountain too, in 2018 or whenever, left a bunch of shit up there, which is, so don't do that. Don't talk about that guy. Anyway, so that's just my opinion, but it's also my conviction that there's more untruths being spoken on that channel than truths, which is a shame, because here is a very intelligent human being who's done amazing amounts of research and spent a lot of time trying to discover the truth. And when you spin bullshit about people, you basically defame yourself and make all the good stuff you ever did completely moot. It doesn't matter. So it's like, I won't even say the name. When I write my book, it's not going in there. I don't care. I won't even say that stupid route near the Norton Couloir that doesn't exist. It's like, please, man, don't do that. It makes you look not good when you do that. Anyway, that's where half my trolls come from. But it's also where a lot of people come to because, oh, who's this person getting shit talked over on another channel? Tom Pollard? Oh, boom, click, subscribe. Just be transparent. Be transparent. I'm jealous, or I hate that guy because he's better looking than me. How would you know? Because you've never seen his face. It's an AI voice that talks in monotone. All right, my claws are out. Don't mess with my people, man. Jake Norton, Andy Politz, Conrad, Dave Hahn. Those are good dudes. Just watch the Discovery. Good shit, man. It's like, don't do that. So what killed Mallory? Lack of oxygen. I think the hole in his head, very possibly. Here's the deal. When Mallory was hit in the head, he was alive, because if he was laying there like not moving, that rock wouldn't have gone in there in the way that it did. And so I think that's probably what precipitated the ultimate fall, where he lost his life. And he was, like, it's, people get hit in the head, or people could, like, a rock could go through your head and you might still have reactions, and you know what I mean? So I think that is what did it. Would they have made it back to Camp 6 or not? I don't know. I don't know. I think Sandy was probably wasted, tired, and super cold, and I think he was up higher by a couple hundred meters and bivvied and curled up and died. And there are some things that I don't know if I know if it's out there, but the 75 Chinese who encountered him as well as Mallory, and on a different trajectory, if you will, from Camp 6, that they, as Julie Summers said, that his skin, so he was facing out, the skin on his face was blackened, which means he died sitting there, not died, because Mallory had no frostbite anywhere other than on his fingers and hands. His face was in absolutely perfect condition, which is really fascinating to me. So, but I don't know, I should talk to a forensic pathologist or something about the trauma to the head and what he might be able to do. I didn't try to look in, to see it. I looked at it for minutes, but anyway, so yeah, Karen, legends in their own mind, the guys from 1999. No, most of the guys are really quiet. I'm just, I didn't have a job, so I started talking and opening my mouth and blabbing on YouTube, and here I am. Like, if I was really busy, I probably would have 10 videos on this channel, and most of them would probably have been about my son playing football and a didgeridoo player in Australia or something like that, or live music channel. That's really what I kind of wanted to do, live music stuff. And but there are some legends on there, and I think one of them is that wasn't up there on the mountain was Eric Simonson, indeed, and Jochen Hemleb, too, as well as, who left the expedition early, Graham Hoyland, the Brit, who was kind of years before was hoping to mount this expedition, and then he became part of the founding member of the 1999 Mallory and Irvine Everest research expedition. He got a TIA, had already summited the mountain. He got a TIA and had to depart the expedition early. Graham that's a guy, he'd be a good guy to have on the channel. He's got a lot of insight and beliefs on what happened. And I think one of the things that I like what Graham did is that Graham did a lot of forensic research into what the weather was that day on the summit that Mallory and Irvine were leaving. And he determined, correct me if I'm wrong, but he determined that the weather was horrendous that day, and it had a change in barometric pressure not unlike what was encountered in 1996 on May 10th during the storm that killed 8 people. So yeah. Did Graham Hoyland run out of funds? No, Graham became, so Billy, you asked, on the expedition in 99, ultimately what happened was Simonson signed on to, I believe, to be the expedition leader. And then the BBC in Britain, and then PBS Nova in the States joined forces to do co-documentaries. So you think about two uber talented producers were there, and they had to agree to just kind of let the other do what they wanted to do. So there's 2 films out there about the discovery of Mallory and Irvine. Liesl Clark was the producer in Boston, and Peter Firstbook was the producer in London with the BBC. Immensely talented guy, and told the most incredible stories of like talking about Sir Francis Younghusband and going through Tibet and things like that, and just amazing. So I keep digressing, but Wyoming Adventures, thank you. I'm glad that you enjoy the interviews. My next video will have I'm going to do an interview with Tom Holzell on Monday, and it's going to be snippets of it because I have a whole video to build around him. Tom is a fascinating guy who is not afraid to share his opinion. So thank you. Marion, how scary was my experience with the TIA in 2019? To me, it wasn't scary at all to have a TIA. I denied its existence. So our team was up at Advanced Base Camp, probably on or about like the 20th or the 19th or something like that. Might have even been a day or two before that. And we were in position to go to the summit. And when we saw there was very few weather windows that year. And we saw all the teams, we're on the north, positioning themselves to go to the summit on the first weather window. We made the decision to stay back. And as Jamie McGinnis said, people will die tomorrow or that day. So do we want to be there, or do we want to just let them come and go? And he was right. Several people died on that day. We let all those people move off the mountain. Literally, when we made the determination to go up the mountain, every single other expedition was over. So we had Advanced Base Camp to ourselves. But we stayed up in Advanced Base Camp. And one of the reasons we did that, instead of going down to regular base camp, was because if we went back down, the Chinese Tibetan mountaineering authorities would close us up. They say, you're done. So we had to stay up there to, like, they're not going to come and extract us. And in that long 10-day period that we were up there, that's when I didn't like the food they were cooking. I'm not complaining about our chef. He was an awesome dude, but I hated the food. I couldn't even drink water. I was just drinking tea and snacking on some of the treats that were in our tent. And so I had this TIA thing the night before we were supposed to leave to go up the mountain. And I wasn't going to tell anybody about it. I just thought, I'll just kind of sneak it. And Jamie McGinnis saw me. Oh my God, I can't believe I've been talking to, I'm going to have to wrap this up soon. So Jamie McGinnis saw me and he goes, what happened? I said, nothing. And he goes, oh yeah, right. So we determined that it was my decision whether I was going to go or not. Peter Hackett, the foremost authority on altitude physiology, texting us saying it's a coin toss if it was a TIA or not. And I just said, I'm going. So the next day we met in our comms tent or in our dining tent. I'm all dressed, ready to go. We're leaving camp to go up the mountain. Mark Sinnott, his son was just a little guy, he goes, I'm going to check messages on my phone before we leave Wi-Fi. He gets a text from Peter Hackett. Hackett's like, if you haven't left yet, I need to talk to Pollard. And Hackett's like, dude, it's coin toss if you live or die. I was like, oh shit. So I ended up bailing and I didn't feel anything. But after I decided to bail, 6 hours later, I was in base camp, living large down there, eating food that I like, drinking a beer, to be completely honest. Anyway, so it didn't feel anything, but I was numb, really numb. I have a photograph, a selfie I took and I sent to my wife and she's like, whoa. And my eyes were like, I thought I looked good. But I didn't. It was bad. So, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. Let me just go through a couple. AJ, great to see you. There's AJ Dandekar, ladies and gentlemen. There is a man who knows his history on the mystery of Mallory and Irvine. Far outweighs any knowledge I have. I am a man of a great respect for this man who's in an interview on this channel. AJ, you're probably blushing right now. Mallory most probably made it to the summit. Odell saw them most probably at the third step. The sighting is a perfect fit from the description of the 99 expedition account of some members, I think. Correct. And and I love that I disagree with people because I don't think they made it to the summit. And I love that people disagree with me. I hope I'm wrong. I want them to have made it. I don't think they couldn't have made it. I think Mallory made the right decision and turned around and wanted to save both their lives. And I think I'll tell you another video down the road. I won't get too far. But is there 4K drone footage of Everest? Why don't they go up the North Col with a drone? James, we had drones. We filmed vast stretches and swaths of the North Face with a drone all the way up to about just below the summit. And the only reason we didn't go up and over is because of the prevailing winds. And Renan Ozturk, our main drone guy, didn't want the drone to get blown over into no man's land. And so all that footage does exist. It's not as easy as just saying, why don't you release it all? Because it's not, first of all, I don't own it. I have a ton of it. I have dozens and dozens of photographs that were taken up there, but it's not my permission to do that. Yeah, so it exists. Would people go back up there and do it again? I have no idea. Maybe. We'll see. Sophia, good. You want some music. Favorite band, favorite singer. I love Tim Buckley. Somebody asked me in the last one. One of my favorite bands of all time is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I love them. It's really a band. They're from Melbourne, Australia. Love them. They've got like 25 albums. Umphreys McGee. Great jam band. Love them. The Wood Brothers, Daniel Donato. Love these guys. Good. The latter two I mentioned, I know them. Great guys. I've had them on my podcast, The Happiness Quotient, on numerous occasions. Uber talented guys. So before I go, and I gotta end this somehow. I am going to do a live Zoom call, 2 different ones in the coming week for members and Patreon Everest Base Camp level members, wherein you can talk and I get to listen and maybe ask you questions. I want you to be looking for that. Even if just for a day, you would need to be a member. On Everest Mystery, it's 99 cents. Patreon.com/Everest Mystery. At the very least, go over there and become a free member, because I'll send a newsletter out and you'll be notified when those Zoom calls are happening. And if you want to participate in the Zoom call, you can join for a day and then quit. I'm totally cool with it. It's not going to make or break it if you come and go like that, but I'm just letting you know. So who's talking about the Doobie Brothers? We were going to interview Tom, what's the name of the guy, the forming member of the band, because he was a fan of Paul Butterfield's, and I was doing a documentary about Paul Butterfield, one of the greatest blues harmonica players of all time. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. That's a chapter in my book, believe me. But Mark doesn't believe they summited. Mark, the hobnailed boots are of concern to me. You once said that you would not clear your driveway of snow wearing those hobnail boots. 100% true. The things I'm wearing on my feet now are probably better than what they wore, but they did it. No frostbite on his toes. I'm wearing these right now. No socks. I always can't find socks when I most need them. So yeah, but Mallory and Irvine were a cut above, as were Norton, Somerville, all the guys on that expedition. Some of the great, Noel Odell. There's a video right there. One of the greatest climbers of all time, certainly, and participated in the first ascent of Nanda Devi in India. There's a whole, whoa. By the way, here's a book for you before I wrap it up. One of the greatest books ever written, John Roskelley, Nanda Devi, The Tragic Expedition. Unbelievable book. He goes up there with Willie Unsolved and Willie Unsold's daughter, who was named Nanda Devi. The Tragic Expedition. I'll leave it at that. One of the greats. Who isn't a Zepp fan? Freaking love Zepp. I used to have this massive poster of Zeppelin on my wall in high school. I'm trying to think if I have any music. I actually have a picture of Jimmy Rogers up on my wall over there, an original, but most of my music stuff isn't around. But so my friends, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much. I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. You know it because I tell you, and I love you, and I really, really do appreciate it. And I love when people disagree with me kindly, respectfully, because that's what we're here for. Everest Mystery is about respecting people, allowing people to have completely varying and differences of opinion, to even vehemently disagree and show respect and kindness. We are all in this together. One love kind of thing. We are all going in the same place. All paths lead to enlightenment. The shortest path is love. And so while my claws were out 10 minutes ago when I talked about the gentleman who has spewed much hatred and untruths about me and a lot of my compatriots on Everest, respect. Everybody's trying to find their own way. Everybody's trying to do their own thing. If that gentleman was in need and going down a river about to go off a waterfall, I would extend my hand. I love people equally, no greater than the other. And that is true. I'm not saying that I don't get pissed off sometime and angry and lose it, because I do. I'm a human being. But we're all in it together. The fact that there are people here sharing conversations, I love. I love, love, love this. This is the coolest thing in the world. Continue to send me ideas for live streams and for videos. I'm working hard. I'm going to try to get back to my one every week for a while. And thank you for putting up with the ad brand inserts that I put in. They really do help me, believe me. Like when the first of the month comes and all the bills are due, it's a hair raiser every month. I hope I'm wealthy someday, monetarily, but I'm not holding my breath in it. Hey, Kayla, thank you so much. You're the best. I love you. Love these lives. Keep it up. I will. Thank you. And so I am going to bid you farewell. Merry Christmas to you. Happy Hanukkah. Happy wonderful time of the year in the north and southern hemispheres. Even a little envious of the people in the warm climate right now because I'm kind of chilly, but the wood stove is cranking and life is good. So thank you to all. I will see you very, very soon. Keep your eye out for the notification about the Zoom call and also about my next live stream, and we'll take it from there. Love you guys. Be well. Do a kind deed. Don't ask for anything in return. Make the world a better place, one tiny step at a time. Peace be with you.